Thinking like the rich does not begin with money, it begins with a decision. Wealth is first created in the mind before it ever appears in the hands. Every fortune that has ever existed started as a single idea held firmly in the imagination of a determined person. The difference between those who struggle and those who rise is not luck, but the way they think about opportunity, effort, and failure. Wealth begins in the mind before it appears in the hand, because every material achievement is first shaped as a thought. No person ever created abundance by accident. It was first imagined, then believed, then acted upon. The mind is the workshop where all plans are designed and all victories are prepared. If a person allows their thinking to remain narrow, fearful, and uncertain, their results will mirror that condition. But when the mind is trained to think in terms of possibility and purpose, it starts to search for ways instead of excuses. The quality of one's thoughts determines the quality of one's results, just as the quality of seeds determines the harvest. Rich thinking is not about wishing for money. It is about developing the inner attitude that produces money. The mind that expects success begins to notice opportunities that others overlook. Where one person sees risk, another sees potential. Where one sees delay, another sees preparation. This difference does not come from luck, but from habitual thinking. A thought repeated often enough becomes a belief, and a belief acted upon becomes a reality. This is why two people can live in the same environment, face the same conditions, and yet reach entirely different destinations. The hand can only build what the mind has first approved. Action without direction wastes energy, but action guided by clear thought multiplies power. Those who train their minds to dwell on goals instead of difficulties move steadily toward improvement. They do not allow temporary failure to poison their inner vision. Instead, they treat mistakes as instructions and setbacks as signals to adjust their course. Their confidence does not come from what they already possess, but from what they believe they can create. The mind that attracts wealth is disciplined. It does not wander aimlessly from idea to idea without commitment. It selects a purpose and returns to it daily. It feeds on thoughts of growth, value, and contribution. Such a mind refuses to accept the belief that success is reserved for a few. It understands that abundance follows service and that the world rewards those who solve problems. This understanding shapes every decision, from how time is used to how challenges are approached. When a person learns to control their thinking, they begin to control their direction. Fear loses its grip when faith takes its place. Doubt fades when belief is exercised. The imagination becomes a powerful tool instead of an idle dream. The person who thinks in terms of achievement naturally acts in ways that support achievement. Their words carry confidence, their posture reflects certainty, and their habits align with progress. Money is not the true starting point of wealth. It is the result of a prepared mind. The mind that believes in growth attracts ideas. The mind that respects effort attracts opportunity. The mind that expects reward discovers paths to it. A person does not rise to the level of their wishes, but to the level of their thinking. Each improvement in thought produces a corresponding improvement in results. The richest harvest is not found in the marketplace, but in the inner world where purpose, belief, and imagination work together to shape visible success. A definite purpose is the compass of the mind, guiding thoughts in a clear direction instead of allowing them to wander without control. When a person has no fixed aim, their thinking becomes scattered, and scattered thinking produces scattered results. The mind needs a target in order to focus its power. Just as a river gains strength when it flows within banks, thought gains strength when it is confined to a specific objective. Riches do not come to those who merely hope. They come to those who know what they want and shape their thinking around that desire. A definite purpose gives meaning to effort. Without it, work feels heavy and discipline feels forced. With it, effort becomes intentional and discipline becomes natural. The mind begins to organize itself around the goal. Ideas arise that match the direction of the aim. Opportunities appear because the mind is alert to recognize them. What once looked like coincidence becomes the result of focused awareness. A person who knows their purpose sees the same world as others but interprets it differently because their thoughts are trained to look for progress instead of comfort. When purpose is clear, doubt loses much of its power. Indecision weakens the will and divides energy, but purpose unites it. The person who decides what they want and commits to it begins to act with greater confidence. Their thoughts no longer argue in opposite directions. They do not spend their time questioning whether success is possible. They spend it planning how to achieve it. This change in thinking shifts the mind from passive dreaming to active creation. A definite purpose also protects against distraction. Life presents countless invitations to drift, to delay, and to forget what matters most. Without a strong aim, the mind is easily pulled into worry, comparison, and unnecessary struggle. With a purpose, the mind filters experiences, it accepts what supports the goal, and cats what weakens it. Time becomes more valuable because it is connected to intention. Energy becomes more powerful because it is not wasted on meaningless pursuits. Purpose directs emotion as well as thought. Desire becomes disciplined instead of scattered. Ambition becomes organized instead of chaotic. Even frustration gains value because it reveals where adjustment is needed. The person with purpose does not collapse under difficulty, they analyze it. They do not complain about obstacles, they question how to pass through them. Their thinking remains tied to the outcome they seek, not the pain of the moment. Riches are not attracted by vague wishes, but by defined intention. The mind must know what it is working toward. When a person fixes their purpose, they create a pattern of thought that naturally leads them toward resources, people, and conditions that support their aim. Their conversations change, their reading changes, their habits change. All of these shifts begin in the mind, shaped by the clarity of the purpose held within it. A definite purpose turns thinking into a tool instead of a burden. It gives direction to imagination and structure to belief. It transforms idle thought into productive vision. The mind that knows its destination does not wander aimlessly. It moves steadily, shaping each decision in harmony with the goal, and allowing each day's effort to become a step toward a chosen form of success. Belief and confidence act as invisible forces that shape the way a person interprets the world and responds to it. When the mind is filled with belief, it naturally searches for proof that success is possible. When the mind is filled with doubt, it searches for reasons to quit. These two attitudes produce entirely different outcomes, even when circumstances are the same. Confidence does not come from outside approval. It grows from repeated thoughts of ability, and worth. A person becomes bold in action only after they become certain in thought. Belief is the bridge between desire and achievement. Desire alone can fade when difficulties appear, but belief gives desire endurance. It allows a person to hold an image of success even when evidence is not yet visible. This inner picture guides decisions and shapes effort. The mind that believes in its own potential does not wait for permission to grow. It assumes growth is natural and moves in that direction. This assumption attracts situations that confirm it. Confidence influences the way opportunities appear. Two people may face the same chance, but only one recognizes it as useful. The confident mind sees possibility where the uncertain mind sees danger. It speaks with assurance, and assurance draws attention. It acts with expectation, and expectation draws cooperation. People respond to the tone of belief just as much as to the logic of words. Those who trust themselves tend to be trusted by others. Belief also determines how failure is experienced. Without confidence, failure becomes a verdict. With confidence, it becomes a lesson. The believing mind treats mistakes as adjustments, not as definitions. It does not allow one setback to rewrite its identity. Instead, it strengthens its inner conviction and tries again with greater understanding. This cycle of belief, action, and correction builds resilience, which is a quiet form of power. The mind accepts whatever it repeatedly tells itself. If a person repeats thoughts of weakness, the mind organizes behavior around limitation. If a person repeats thoughts of strength, the mind organizes behavior around ability. This is why belief must be cultivated intentionally. It is not a gift given to a few. It is a habit built through focused thinking. Each act of courage reinforces confidence, and each act of confidence expands. Belief. Belief shapes the future by influencing present choices. A person who expects success prepares for it. They study, practice, and plan because they assume their effort will matter. A person who expects failure avoids preparation because they assume effort will be wasted. The difference lies not in talent, but in mental direction. Confidence turns preparation into a natural response instead of a forced duty. Opportunities are drawn toward those who believe they can handle them. The mind that trusts its capacity becomes alert to chances for growth. It listens differently, observes differently, and acts differently. This alertness creates a chain reaction. Belief leads to action, action leads to experience, and experience strengthens belief. Over time, this cycle becomes a pattern of progress. Belief and confidence are not loud qualities, they work silently within. They influence posture, speech, and choice without announcement. They guide the hand through the decisions shaped in the mind. When belief is firm, the mind remains open to expansion. When confidence is steady, the individual becomes a magnet for situations that match that inner certainty. This is how thought transforms into influence, and influence transforms into visible success. Fear is the most silent and destructive barrier between a person and their potential. It does not announce itself loudly. It enters the mind as a small doubt and grows into a habit of hesitation. Fear of failure convinces the mind to avoid effort. Fear of criticism teaches the tongue to remain silent when ideas should be spoken. Fear of loss persuades the will to stay in safe places where no growth can occur. These forms of fear do not stop success directly. They slowly weaken the courage needed to pursue it. The mind cannot move forward while it is busy protecting itself from imagined danger. Fear trains thought to focus on what might go wrong instead of what could go right. This creates a pattern of defensive thinking. Plans are delayed, opportunities are questioned, and action is postponed. The person begins to explain their inaction with logic, but the true cause lies in emotional resistance. Fear does not argue with facts, it argues with feelings, and feelings often overpower reason when left unchallenged. Negative association strengthens fear. The mind absorbs the attitudes of those it listens to most. When a person surrounds themselves with people who complain, criticize, and predict failure, their thinking becomes heavy and cautious. These voices plant seeds of limitation. They turn simple risks into terrifying dangers and small setbacks into permanent defeat. The environment of thought becomes filled with warnings instead of encouragement. A person may believe they are thinking for themselves, but they are often repeating the fears of others. The influence of association works quietly. Conversations shape belief. Repeated stories of failure shape expectation. Constant exposure to doubt shapes decision. The mind begins to treat caution as wisdom and inaction as safety. Over time, the desire to improve weakens and the habit of settling grows stronger. The person does not notice the change because it happens gradually, like a shadow stretching across a room. Fear and negative association work together to keep the mind focused on survival instead of achievement. Survival thinking asks how to avoid pain. Achievement thinking asks how to create value. When fear dominates, the mind chooses comfort over challenge. It prefers certainty over possibility. It rejects new ideas not because they are wrong, but because they disturb familiar patterns. This limits both imagination and effort. Freedom from fear begins with awareness. The mind must recognize fear as a signal, not a command. Doubt can be questioned. Negative voices can be filtered. The person who chooses their mental company carefully protects their thinking from contamination. They listen to ideas that strengthen purpose and avoid those that weaken it. They replace fear-based thoughts with goal-based thoughts. Instead of asking what could go wrong, they ask what could be learned. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear control direction. Each active movement weakens fear's authority. Each decision made in favor of growth reduces its power. The mind that learns to walk through fear develops a new relationship with difficulty. It sees challenge as a test of strength rather than a threat to safety. Negative association loses influence when positive influence is chosen deliberately. The mind grows toward what it hears, sees, and repeats. When surrounded by people who speak of effort, improvement, and possibility, thinking becomes lighter and more forward-moving. The inner dialogue changes. Instead of saying, "I cannot," it begins to say, "I will learn." Instead of expecting defeat, it prepares for progress. Fear shrinks when the mind is occupied with purpose, and harmful influence fades when better influence takes its place. Allowing thought to move in the direction of growth rather than retreat, value creation is the true source of lasting wealth because money is only a symbol of usefulness expressed in material form. A person does not receive riches for wanting them, but for providing something that others need or desire. The greater the value offered, the greater the reward returned. This principle shifts the mind from seeking gain to seeking contribution. Instead of asking how to get more, the mind begins to ask how to become more useful. This change in thinking transforms work into service and effort into investment. The creation of value requires thought, imagination, and skill. It demands that a person study problems and design solutions. It requires attention to quality and a desire to improve what already exists. When the mind is trained to look for ways to help, it naturally discovers ways to earn. Wealth grows out of usefulness because usefulness builds trust, and trust builds opportunity. The person who solves problems becomes important, and importance attracts compensation. Persistence gives value its power. Many can begin, but few continue. Ideas are common, but sustained effort is rare. The world rewards those who remain when others retreat. Persistence is the discipline of returning to a purpose despite difficulty. It is the habit of continuing when enthusiasm fades. It turns ordinary ability into uncommon results by adding time and consistency to effort. Without persistence, value remains unfinished and potential remains untested. Lasting wealth cannot be built on chance or impulse. It is built on steady action guided by intention. Each attempt strengthens skill. Each failure adds understanding. Each C or erection brings the work closer to usefulness. Persistence converts experience into mastery. Mastery increases value. Increased value increases reward. This chain is simple in structure but demanding in practice because it requires patience and faith in unseen progress. Value creation also shapes character. It trains the mind to focus on solutions instead of complaints. It teaches respect for effort and appreciation for learning. A person who creates value does not depend on circumstances, they influence them. They do not wait for perfect conditions, they improve imperfect ones. Their thinking moves away from entitlement and toward responsibility. They recognize that income is the shadow of service and that reward follows contribution. Persistence protects value from being lost. Temporary success fades when effort stops. Habits maintain what talent begins. The persistent mind does not abandon a path because it becomes uncomfortable. It adjusts its method but not its direction. It understands that difficulty is part of growth and delay is part of development. Each day of effort strengthens the foundation of future reward. Wealth built without value collapses because it has no root. Wealth built with value remains because it rests on usefulness. The person who commits to being valuable cannot be easily replaced. Their skill becomes their security. Their knowledge becomes their currency. Their reliability becomes their reputation. These qualities attract opportunity long before they attract money. Persistence also trains the emotions. It reduces the power of impatience and weakens the habit of quitting. The mind learns to stay with a task long enough to see results. This endurance becomes a quiet advantage. Others may be more gifted, but the persistent are more dependable. Over time, dependability becomes influence, and influence becomes income. When value and persistent nunts work together, they form a system of growth. Value directs effort toward usefulness. Persistence keeps effort alive long enough to matter. Together they create progress that does not depend on luck. They turn ordinary days into steps of advancement. They make work meaningful by linking it to contribution. They allow wealth to grow naturally from purpose instead of force. They build success that remains because it is supported by service and sustained by discipline.